Well, this is Miss Shelby Puckett. She's with the Carroll County Historical Society. Miss Puckett, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Me and Ethan have talked about having you on for a long time, and we just got around to it now. But we're very honored to speak with you today.
Thank you. Thank you.
It means a lot to us. And we've interviewed a few other people on the Historical Society board, Gail Goad, Mark Harmon, but we haven't got a chance to interview you, the president, so it's pretty exciting for us.
Absolutely. So where did you grow up?
I grew up in Patrick County, a little place called Ararat in Patrick County. Graduated from Blue Ridge High School, then went on to Radford University, and became a teacher.
Blue Ridge High School. I've never heard of that. Where's that at?
It's Ararat.
Ararat, Virginia.
Ararat, Virginia.
Is it still around today?
No, the schools were consolidated there. The first class, I think, in Patrick County graduated in 71, 70 here, and then 71 there. And at the time I went to high school, there were 5 small high schools, and they combined them into the one high school in Stewart.
What did your parents do for a living?
Farm. We were tobacco farmers.
Did you help on the farm?
Always.
Yeah.
From the time I was a little girl, one of my first remembrances is we would, in those days, have to, what we called hand up tobacco. You'd give it, somebody would tie it on a stick, and then they'd put it in the barn and cure it. And I was probably 5, 6 years old, and my grandpa made a table for me to stand on so I could reach the person who was twining the tobacco on the stick. And I can remember just as a very, very small child handing up tobacco, but we always had to work.
Is that something that you enjoyed?
Farming, did I enjoy?
Yeah.
You know, I guess I didn't really think about it, but I didn't. It was life. It was what I grew up with, and everybody worked. Everybody I knew worked. You know, I was not the only person doing that. My dad had no boys. He had 2 girls, and so we were expected to pull our weight, and we had a good time a lot of times because kids in the neighborhood, we'd go help other people work, and they'd pay me. I used to make $0.25 an hour handing up tobacco, and but then those kids would come and help us. So it was it was work, but there was some social to it also. But looking back on it, it is extremely labor intensive, or it was at that time. It's not so much now, but very labor intensive. And then in off season, my dad grew truck crops. He picking beans, and we would do vegetables when I got older. And my sister and I'd take them to Mount Airy and peddle them up and down the streets in Mount Airy.
How often did you get them out into Hillsville?
Never. I was a grown person before I ever, other than I would ride the bus to and from Radford. And of course, if I came that way, but usually we did not come that way home. But if I rode the bus from Radford home down to Mount Airy, we'd come through Hillsville. But we never came on the mountain. Never came on the mountain, never went to Stewart. The little section of the county, of Patrick County I live in, borders North Carolina. My mom worked in the textile mills in Mount Airy. We shopped in Mount Airy. We rarely knew that we were residents of Virginia.
Was it Haynes she worked for?
She worked for Spencer's, and it was they made baby clothes for years and years. I think now they're turning it into a big Marriott hotel in downtown Mount Airy. They're going through a real revival down there.
We actually have some friends that are from Ararat. He says it takes a while to get here in the mornings. But to go to Patrick or Stewart, it's even farther. So it's kind of like a weird little niche area where it's a little bit farther from anywhere in Virginia. It's much closer to Mount Airy.
It is much closer. And I actually, you know, at one point, if you move over just a little bit farther and one more road over, a lot of those, and my students in those days would opt to go to Mount Airy. And at one point, you could kind of swap schools. And of course, I don't know of any Mount Airy students who came into Carroll, but you know, students would go into Mount Airy and go to school. And then they started putting a fee on that and change that.
Yeah, that's true.
But we are geographically, we're more aligned with Mount Airy than we are. The first time I ever came on the mountain, and I don't know how, we didn't go to Hillsville. On Sunday afternoon, my daddy had a pickup, and after church, we would ride around, and so my mom and my aunt, my uncle would ride inside. My uncle would drive the pickup, and Daddy would sit on the back of the truck with me and my sister, who was 3 years younger than me. And so we went to this place they called Galax, and I was sitting in the back of the truck, and so I'm seeing Galax from this perspective, as you're coming out. Yeah. So the first time I went to Galax as a grown-up and went into town, I didn't recognize it because I had never seen Galax looking forward, because we were riding in the back of the truck. But my uncle told us we had been to Galax, but we were just riding around. Yeah. So, wow. But that was that was an unusual thing too, because you'd have to find somebody who had a vehicle and who got gas, and we'd ride around on. But that was a big deal when you could ride around.
I guess that was common at the time too. Really, not really traveling very far from where you lived.
True.
Yeah. That makes you think. Really, the guys who went off in the service to Italy or France, how big of a transition that must have been from not being anywhere to going overseas.
And Ararat, where we're located in Ararat, we are just at the foot of the mountain. Yeah. So we're not on the mountain, but we're just at the foot of the mountain. And when I was growing up, we were very isolated. We got electricity in 1947. My dad was in the Army. We didn't have a car. We had to depend on somebody to take us where we went. Yeah. And the roads were dirt. The road was paved. The road by my house was paved the year I got my driver's license when I was 16 years old. But I learned to drive on dirt roads. So we were, children, young people, anybody now has no idea the effect that television had. Because television opened up so many, it made us see things that we had never seen before.
Right.
And it sort of equalized, right. Even though we were in the mountains, when we got television and you began to see even the commercials, because we could have a refrigerator like the people in New York City, or something like that. Television had a huge impact. Television and automobiles, once they did the roads and people after the war, everybody started getting cars. Those two things, I think, had just a tremendous impact. So,
do you remember the first time you used a telephone?
Well, I'll tell you a story about that. My mom and dad did not have a telephone. Right. And my uncle had the only telephone in the area. And so if we wanted to make a phone call to somebody, we would travel. He lived 1 mile exactly from where we were. And when I was at Radford University, I met a young man from Tech, and we decided we were going to get married. And in order for me to get married as a student, the dean had to have my parents' permission. So we made arrangements for my dad to be at my uncle's house at 10 o'clock in the morning. And then we waited for the dean, and the dean didn't show, and she finally gets there at 11:15 because she's had a crisis. And so she calls down to my uncle, and she explains who she is, and I want to get married, and my dad has to give permission. And my Uncle Bob said, he was here and he waited, and he said she can marry anybody she wants to because I trust her judgment.
Okay, there we go.
1962.
Wow, yeah.
And we still did not have a telephone in our house.
So this was at the time when Radford was still a women's college.
All women. And your boyfriend came with a tie and a shirt. You could sit downstairs. You had to be chaperoned. I mean, we couldn't wear pants. In 1960, we were allowed to put on pants because we had so much snow. And to go over to even the dining hall it was cold and snowy. And so if we put a raincoat on over our pants, we could wear pants on campus. So we were not allowed to wear pants at all.
And when did that change? Was it in the 70s?
I don't know. I guess it would have been in the 70s, probably that. I graduated there in 62. That was the year I got married, and graduated 62 and started teaching. So that was still the rule, and I don't know.
We got to go on a field trip Monday and tour it, and it's grown up a lot.
Yeah, it's a huge campus now.
So,
We got a chance to go up in the library and go to the top floor and look at the museum in the back of the library, and it had some artifacts from the earlier days of Radford University. And it's kind of neat to look at.
Oh yeah, it is. I mean, even for me, because I get a lot of times in the alumni magazine, you get those pictures back to the 1913. I think was the first class.
Wow.
It was somewhere way back, and then and of course, even when I was there, it was a preparatory school for teachers. It was Radford College, Women's Division of Virginia Tech, but it was also a teachers' college. So that was primarily what you majored in.
So a division of tech.
It was considered, my diploma from Radford says Radford College, Women's Division of Virginia Tech Polytechnic Institute.
Wow, okay.
I did not know that. That's awesome.
Yeah, interesting. I believe that's how Withfield Community College started as well. It was originally a satellite campus of Virginia Tech. So a lot of schools around here are like that.
Yeah.
And then I'm not even sure when they became a separate university. I didn't keep up, with the history of that.
You mentioned earlier that you rode the bus from Mount Airy to Radford. What kind of bus system was it?
It was I think we were on I think it was a Greyhound that went through. Even then, I did a lot of travel on the train because in the 60s, trains were still relatively prevalent. And my suite mates at Radford were both from Northern Virginia, one from Northern Virginia, one from Southern Maryland, and my roommate was from Bristol. So when if we wanted to go home with her, we would get on the train and go to Bristol. And if we wanted to go up to Northern Virginia to visit. And my favorite train story involves Elvis Presley.
Really?
Yes. Elvis Presley came home from the Army and came into New Jersey and was on his way, I think, to Arkansas to be processed out. And he was coming on a train. And so a stop was going to be made at Radford College. And it was snowing. It was, I think, January, February. It was really, really cold. And at one time I could tell you the year, but I'm not sure. It was in the 60s. I'm not sure what year he came out. But anyway, so he's coming to Radford College. And so we made up money and bought a ticket for the most voluptuous girl that we knew at Radford, because we hoped if she could get on that train, she could get access to Elvis Presley, and we vicariously, would have an experience with Elvis. So the train stops, Elvis comes out on the platform and he's waving, and you've got hundreds of Radford students swooning and screaming and carrying over Elvis Presley. And the train starts moving down the track, and we're all running down the track with snow piled up. And I slipped, and I hit my knee on the railroad track. And I proudly wear my Elvis Presley scar today.
Beautiful memory.
Did she get on the train? Elvis was on?
She got on the train. She went as far as Marion, Virginia, I think. They would not let her anywhere near Elvis Presley. She got off, got her ticket, and came back. And we all wept a little bit. But I always loved Elvis. I never got over that. I always loved Elvis Presley. So,
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That is neat.
But I do have the scar. I fell right across that railroad track and just cracked it, just kind of split it open. So my daughter used to say to me, you need to paint it and make a smiley face, and show everybody your Elvis scar.
So you were at Radford to study teaching?
I did, and at the time, basically, that was because most of us, in order to go to school, we had to have a scholarship, and your scholarship was a teaching scholarship. You paid it back by teaching.
Right.
If you got a scholarship for a year, then you would teach a year in the state of Virginia. And then I had a work scholarship. I worked in the dining hall for about 2 years, and then the last year I decided I didn't want to work in the dining hall anymore, so I delivered papers from Roanoke Times.
Okay, yeah.
And would take the papers around and deliver the papers, but most of the time I worked in the dining hall. But and really I don't know. I mean, I guess you could have got a degree in math and certain things and probably found another job, but just everybody I knew just went into teaching.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Is that what you wanted to do as a little girl?
No. I wanted to be a lawyer.
Okay.
And my daddy would always quote to me, there's a verse in the Bible about woe to you scribes and Pharisees or something, you know. And he thought that it was awful that a girl would want to be a lawyer. But if I still, that was always my dream, to be a lawyer.
Do you sometimes regret that you weren't able to do that?
No, I have very few regrets in life, the way life has worked out. Who knows? I might have been miserable,
Yeah.
I had a good career. I worked in education 35 years.
Yeah.
I liked the students. I like the students a lot, and still keep up with a lot of them. Going to a class reunion for the class of 65
Awesome,
in a
yeah.
couple of weeks. And so, no, I have very few regrets in life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Usually the things that happened to me that I worried and I thought were so awful and all of that, in the long run turned out to be pretty good.
Yeah.
It worked out okay.
It's funny how life works like
It
that.
is. It's very, very unusual that it does that.
So you said you got married at the end of your college.
I got married in '62. My husband was a graduate of Tech, and we ran into my school principal at the hospital in Mount Airy. And my husband had majored in math at Tech, and in '62, by this time we got married '62. I taught at Fort Chiswell one year, taught at Franklin Elementary School one year, and then he was ready to teach also. And so we ran into Mr. Hodges, who was director of personnel in Carroll County. And his words to me were, if you can talk your husband into coming to teach math in Carroll County, we'll find something for you to do. A little sexist. But anyway, that was pretty much it, because they were so desperate for teachers to come in, math teachers.
How did you meet him?
Blind date.
Blind date.
Blind
Okay.
date. And we were married. We came to Carroll County in '65. We had 2 children. Both of my children graduated from Carroll County High School, one in '83 and one in '86. And then in '87, my first husband and I were divorced, and then I remarried in 1989, to my current husband.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you came to Carroll County. Your first husband got a job teaching math.
He did, and he stayed in Carroll County. He taught math a couple of years, and then went out to Laurel Fork, was a principal,
Okay.
and then he was asked to go to Grayson County, and he was a principal at Fairview, and then he went to Freeze High School and was principal there. Then came back to Carroll County to teach. I think Mr. Harold Golden might have been instrumental in getting him to come to Woodlawn to teach math. He taught there, and then he finished his career at the high school.
Okay.
And what did you teach at Carroll County?
Well, as he said, they'd find something for me to do,
Right.
and at the beginning, that was pretty much my career. When I majored in social studies and history, and with a minor in English at Radford. And my first year, I taught at Fort Chiswell, and I taught government and 8th grade civics. The next year, my second teaching year, I taught at Franklin Elementary, 7th graders, and taught every subject, including PE, spelling, everything.
Yeah.
I mean, it was totally self-contained, and you taught everything. And it was at that point I decided if I had to do that again, I'd just quit teaching. But then we met Mr. Hodges, and when I came here, the year I came to Hillsville, I taught government and history, which was just one of my very, very favorite years. It still is. 65, that class of 65 with government and U.S. history. I love that class. Yeah. And then the superintendent came at the end of that year and said, our guidance counselor is going to be out for a year or so. Would you consider moving over to guidance? Yes. So I moved over to guidance, stayed in guidance, really liked that, except at that time, every transcript you sent out for a college had to be hand printing.
Really? Wow.
I would print, and it appeared to me I did very little counseling of any kind and very little guidance. I copied a lot of transcripts that year because if a student's applying to 3 schools, you've got to and you got to go all the way back to the 8th to 9th grade and record every class and all that. So then my first year, my daughter was born in 65, and then after my year in guidance, I decided I would stay home, and I was expecting my second child. And they called me back that year to come and finish out the year. A teacher was retiring at the middle of the year who taught 9th grade English. So I finished out that year in 9th grade English, decided I'd go home with my kids. They called me and asked me to come back and do year-round Head Start. So I did that. And this was about the time, is getting to the late 60s, when the federal programs started coming in. So I finished out my Head Start year, and they asked me if I would go to St. Paul in a special needs project. And I went as a homeschool counselor. And by that time I had started working on my counseling degree because I did like that a lot. And I was at St. Paul from 69, 70 until 75, at which time they moved me to the high school counseling, full-time guidance counselor. But at St. Paul, I taught 3rd grade. And one of my 3rd grade students came in. I taught 3rd grade language arts half a day and was in guidance half a day. And one of my 3rd grade students came in one day and bought tickets last week.
Awesome.
So I got to see a 3rd grader.
That's exciting, yeah.
He no longer looks like a 3rd grader.
Yeah, I know. You mentioned you were getting your counseling degree. Was that a master's degree?
It was.
And was that through distance learning, or did you have to?
No, I went to Radford. You had to go, and you had to. I would go in the summer, you know, and then at some point you had to stay on campus for some period of time to get your degree. But I did it over a period of time. But no, there was no long distance learning. You had to show up in person to do that.
Was it difficult to go back to school and raise children at the same time?
In some ways it was, but my children had been born in 65, 67, and by this time we were 70s. They were no longer small children. My husband was very supportive of my going back to school, and my parents were relatively close by, and so my parents loved nothing more than keeping those kids, and so I had a good support system. I had lots of resources to help me out with that. So I got my degree, my counseling degree, my full degree in 74, and then went to the high school and stayed at the high school, and I was in the guidance department until 91, 92, and then was moved over to be assistant principal for instruction.
So when I mentioned that we were interviewing you to my dad, he mentioned to me that you were his counselor at one point, and he was pretty excited to hear that. Luke, do your parents have any?
Nothing. I haven't really talked to them about that very much. Probably should, but
I just thought it was neat that
I knew his grandmother. His grandmother lived next door to me, and she was like, they would come to my house and stay with me. And in the evening time, like if my husband was working, he did a lot of work with teacher aides, and he did a lot of teaching, especially when they got into computers, because he had learned about computers. And so his grandmother, she was my buddy from a time she was like this size, you know, so we were next door neighbors.
Yeah. Can you tell us a bit about the lessons that you took away from being a high school counselor? Because high school is a very fundamental part of so many people's lives. It can really make or break a person. What lessons did you take away from that experience?
I don't know that I've really thought about it in terms of lessons. Looking back on it, it was a good time in my life. I liked the students very much. Enjoyed working with them, helping, in any way that I could help. And I guess one of the biggest lessons, if you want to call it a lesson, is you get out what you put in. You know, if you're interested in a student, and you're really interested in a student, you know that. You know which teachers are really involved. And I think I was lucky. Mrs. Velma Horton, who was a legend in the guidance, was our guidance director at that time. And she was dedicated to seeing every student. We met with every student at least twice a year, and we scheduled that into it. Now, that doesn't sound like a whole lot, but we would have 300 graduates. Right. And so we made it a point. Now, you could come any time to visit the guidance department, but we actually wanted to see a student face to face, sit down and talk about that student and what that person wanted to do. Yeah. And then when you went out into the hall, the other thing I used to do a lot is I used to do, quote, hall patrol. You know, I'd get on the corner and send the kids here and send the kids there. And it was amazing, just the camaraderie that you could have with kids at that point, you know. And sometimes I would know all this stuff that would be going on, and the kids would say to me, "How'd you know that? You know, who told you that?" And I would have heard it, you know, in the hall. Right. That, you know, because I always tried to be with the students. I did. I mean, I really enjoyed that. And I've always felt that way, even with my grandchildren. They ended up going to an urban school in Greensboro, and their guidance people never knew them. Yeah. You know, you could ask the kids now, who was your guidance counselor? They have no idea. You know, and so my grandson fails class, and so they put him in Latin for the next year. You know, so you know, there's a little disconnect. Yeah. So I think that was one of the things that we did when I was in guidance that I was most proud of. Yeah. One of the things that we worked with, and the kids will come back now and thank me, and then I didn't think we should have been doing it, but we were assigned attendance. And if you didn't come to school, or you laid out of school or whatever, we had to call your parents. You know, that got to be a guidance thing, that we were involved in attendance. And I used to think, now that should not be my job. That should be somebody else's job. And it's amazing to me how many kids will come back to me and say, thank you for getting me into school. Thank you for calling my parent. Thank you for helping me. So I hear that now, and in retrospect, that was a good thing too. Yeah. But we had a smoking pit.
Oh, yeah.
I've heard about that.
In the days when I had a lot of first experiences. I'd never been to a school with a smoking pit. So I got smoking pit duty too, that you had a note, everybody had a note from a parent on record. You can imagine how many parents signed that one. But teachers smoked, principal smoked, guidance counselor, some of us smoked, you know. I mean, it was just, smoking was
different time.
It was just allowed. I mean, it was not anything at all. So
even when my dad was in school, he said that people would smoke out in the parking lot, and they'd have guns in the back of their truck, just full out display. That wouldn't pass nowadays.
It was just a different time. It really was. But the smoking pit was a whole different experience for me, and I never had problems with kids. You know, I can't really recall. Even though you would have to correct students, I really never recall a student in those days being really disrespectful and ugly and things like that. The other experience that I had that was a first for me, when Black History Week first started at Wytheville Community College, I used to take our students. We had maybe 8, 10 black students, and I would take them to Wytheville Community College for Black History Week, and my experiences with black people had been very, very limited, and so it was a good experience for me. I always thought it was a good experience, and I hope it was for them. I had a very good relationship with my black students. So
wonderful.
And I still have students who come to see me.
So you did that for a little while, and then you switched to, or I guess for a good bit, and then you switched to being a vice principal.
That was the very last 7 years, I think, that I was there.
What was that transition like? Did you enjoy that? Was it a big change for you? Or?
Let's give you a unique perspective on being an administrator, having really close contact with kids for so many years, being a counselor, and then being kind of, at least nowadays, our administrators are involved, they're kind of distant. They're
And you don't have the time.
Yeah.
When I started, I was for instruction, the assistant principal for instruction, and you're dealing with a lot of things at that point. You know, you're dealing with textbook and curriculum and the vocational department and things like that, and there just were not enough hours in the day. And then you really didn't have a reason to see the students as much. And then toward the end, I started doing discipline, and I think the last 2 to 3 years I did discipline. So then you've got another different perspective, you know, because you're dealing with students and you're having to kind of fuss at them and, you know, try to get them to do and all of that. So I liked, in terms of enjoyment, I loved being a guidance counselor. I loved being a teacher. I loved that 3rd grade. I loved those government kids and history kids I had. And so in rank order, being an administrator would be my least favorite job in terms of least favorite jobs I had at the high school in education.
Being in charge of, sorry, go ahead.
Did you have to have a special degree to be an administrator?
Yes,
Okay.
I got that degree also. That was a master's in school administration. Yeah. So
That requirement persists today, and I believe you have to take a test and get a license
you
as
do.
well. Did you have to get licensed?
And, well, I actually, when I was teaching in Franklin, way back in '63, we had to take a national teacher's exam.
Okay.
And so I'm not sure that it was required, but then if you passed it in North Carolina, then you were okay. So you had to do those license tests.
Did you get your master's in school administration at Radford as well?
I did. I did.
And then did you go on campus for those classes, or did?
I did.
Okay,
Yes,
yeah.
again. I went back and went to school again.
A lot of education under your belt.
The first year I did the scheduling at the high school for years,
Yeah.
and we had some doozy scheduling
Yeah, I bet.
things. You know, we had pegboards and we had index cards and we had this and we had that. And I understand the first year that they opened the high school, they did the scheduling out of the elementary school in the basement of the elementary school and carried all this stuff around. But the first year, 1985, I did all the scheduling by computer.
Yeah.
Went to New England with a friend of mine and prayed all the way up and back that nothing happened, because at that point nobody else could have opened school.
Yeah, that's true.
That, you know, I was the only one in the guidance department because we had a man who came and worked with me, and, you know, we had a special scheduling program and all of that. And it turned out that I was the only one at that point who could do it, and I was just terrified something was going to happen. And I kept saying, well, what if something happens to me? We can't open school because the kids don't have a schedule.
Yeah.
But that was their first year. Mr. James Epperson had a computer store on Lebanon Street in Mount Airy.
Yeah.
And I would call him about 3 times a week, and he would come up to help me. And then, of course, my husband then at that time he had gotten really interested in computers and programming and all of that. And so he was able to help me overcome some of that. So, but I guess in terms of what they do with the schedule now with the computer, mine was probably pretty primitive.
Yeah.
I mean, you know,
Now works a whole system. I'm pretty close with the teacher who handles all that, and he starts working on it when graduation hits, and then he works on it all throughout the summer, and then even come August, there's still some kinks he's got to work out. And just because of the amount of students we have at the high school and all the different classes and the requirements you have to take, the prerequisites, it's a mess, even with the advanced computer software.
It is. And I would work all summer. I mean, I'd take it all home and sit, you know, day after day after day, and you'd get everything going, and then you'd start to even classes and throw everything out. And then the first week of school, it seemed to me 50% of the kids had changed their minds and wanted to change their schedule, or their parents didn't want them to have a certain teacher, and the parents were there to say, take my kid out of so-and-so's class, and it's like, I hated the beginning of school, you know, just hated it. So, but it was just part of it. It was part of it.
So you handled discipline your last 3 years. What was your approach to disciplining the kids at the high school?
Gosh, I don't know if I really had an approach. I tried to, again, I guess as much as you could from a counselor's point of view, and I guess we were always taught. A lady came one time and did a workshop at the beginning of the year, and she said a child who at his most unlovable is the child who needs most loving. And in many cases that was true. In many cases, the discipline, if you could track it back to its source, terrible home conditions, bad things happening, lots of stuff going on that caused that. I was fortunate in I was not there. Drugs had just started. Just when I left in '98, it was not a major problem with young people. It was beginning to be in this problem, and I guess most of the kids, we thought pot was a big problem, at that point. And but I didn't have to deal with kids on drugs so much and things like that. The biggest problems that I had, the very biggest problems, were truancy, failure just to do anything, just to come to school and create a problem for a teacher. Some kid would love to create a problem. So, but they'd get back to you. I have to tell you a story about that too. I had one young man, and I couldn't do a thing, no matter what I did, no matter what I said. I decided if suspending him was a pleasure and not a punishment. So I started, he'd have to stay after school. I even stayed with him after school and made him sit out in the outer office with his book and read a book or do something together. I mean, I did everything I knew for this kid. And he finally squeaked through. He finally graduated. And my husband and I went into the Pizza Hut and one evening to get a pizza, and he was sitting in the back cooking. And he looked at me and he smirked. I said to my husband, let's go. He'll spit in my pizza. I know he will. I don't really know that he would have, but my point being, somehow or the other, they usually ended up outdoing you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Until a kid decided to change, it's very, very hard to change behaviors. It really is. Yeah.
So at this point, you retire in what, 98?
I retired in 98. In 1982, let me back up a little bit and tell you how I got into this. This is my second home. In 1982, I was invited to go to the governor's inauguration. And there were 5 of us who went down, and one of the men who went was Tim Clary, and you've probably heard Tim Clary. He's kind of legendary. He was a sports announcer. He did a lot of things. He was the mayor of Hillsville. So Mr. Clary, he was driving. His wife was in the front, and there were some of us in the back, and they were talking about history in Carroll County and how Grayson County had started a historical society, and Wythe had a historical society. Everybody had a historical society except for Carroll County, and all the things that were being lost because we didn't have any group making an effort to preserve it. So Mr. Clary said what we ought to do when we get back is to see how would we start a historical society. So one of the ladies and I got in touch with Betty Fields, and she was instrumental in starting the Grayson County one, and she guided us in what to do. And I think it was the 22nd of February 1982 we had the first meeting upstairs. I wrote a letter to the supervisors, asked them if we could have a meeting for the purpose of founding a historical society. The county gave their blessing, no money, but they gave the blessing. And on that night, Mr. Woodrow Bedsall from Lambsburg, was very, very much the historian. And we had about 20 people that night, foggy, freezing fog. It was awful. But that was the beginning of the Historical Society. That was in 1982. And so I've been involved with that for a long time. Even when I was teaching, I was very much involved in the Historical Society. I tell everybody I carried everything around, the artifacts, everything we had in the trunk of my car for 10 years trying to find a home. And in 1992, Dr. Porter's widow and 2 daughters made us an offer on the old post office building. And so we bought that, paid for that in a year, and stayed there until 2006. This building became vacant in 1998, and it was just standing unused. And somebody came and did a study of reusing it, repurposing it.
Yeah.
And at that time, it was pretty much standard. If you had a historical society, you would move it to the courthouse. And so in 2006, we set up a museum here.
Yeah.
So we've been here ever since 2006.
It's a beautiful museum.
Yeah.
Been through it several times. And
Yeah.
It's wonderful what you
Yeah.
have here.
So this has kind of been my home away from home.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is the thing, with the stress of school and all the other things that go on, that it's just, this is the fun part.
So how often are you here at this
Well, when we do the play, every day and every night.
Right.
But generally, I'm here 2 to 3 days a week.
And you are a complete volunteer? You're not compensated?
We have one paid, we're open 5 days a week from Tuesday through Saturday, 4 hours a day. And we have one paid worker. We have a museum manager who is our paid worker. Everybody else, it's all volunteer.
It's amazing.
And in 2014, the owner of the Sidney Allen House gave that to the Historical Society. And so we worked on raising some money for that. In 2018, started that restoration project. So we've kind of got the Allen House going now and this one, and we combine it so that we provide tours for 3. You come and go through the old courthouse, you can go through the museum, and then you can go through the Allen House. And we're open, like we do guided tours in all 3 places the first weekend of each month.
Yeah. A couple months ago, my dad and I actually took a tour of the Sidney Allen House. And you were the person who guided us around, so that was pretty neat. Afterwards, my dad poked me and was like, I had it. So, yeah, it was pretty neat.
I get busy out there, and people, if you don't come and say to me and talk to me, because people are coming through and they're coming through so fast, a lot of times you'll get by me without, I won't recognize you. So.
Well, right now the play is going on.
The play is on.
And it's always a big event in Carroll County.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about a little bit about the process of kind of like what happens with the play when it starts up and the craziness that's involved with it for the little while that's going?
I guess maybe Frank Levering gave you the background of the play that we started in 2012, and we basically have followed the same format every year. Once we determine when we're going to do it, the cast will be the final say on dates because they've got to tell you when they can be there and all that. We set our dates and we sell tickets, and we've always sold the tickets out of this museum here, and it's all really very, very old school. We have a box of tickets, and if you want a ticket, you come in and we'll pick a ticket out, write your name down, give you your ticket, take your money, or you can call us on the telephone, give us your name, we'll pull your ticket, put it in an envelope, and mail it to you. We do not do credit cards. We do everything but check or cash, and it's worked very well for us. Some of the things we do is a little bit redundant, but it's a check for us and we've made very few mistakes. I mean, we've rarely ever got somebody at the wrong play or whatever, but it's hectic. Right now we're in a little bit of a lull. You always have the first couple of weeks those people who want to be the first. They want to make sure they get a ticket.
Right.
Then it kind of dies down while those people who are kind of making their mind up and they wait and say, oh my gosh, some of the shows are sold out. I may not get a ticket. So we're getting ready for the next big surge of sales.
Yeah, I'm sure you get a lot of sales like the weekend before if they're not already sold out.
Yeah, Ralph Berry is working on with Cardinal News. He's working. He's been here. He's working on, and then the other media outlet that has been so good to us has been Channel 8 in High Point. They did, and they've been running those. They did some podcasts and some video in 2019, and somebody just told me the other day they came and got tickets from down there and said they were running some of those again. So.
Awesome. We actually interviewed the executive editor of the Cardinal News. His
Did
name
you?
was Dwayne Yancey. He actually helped found the Cardinal News too. And wonderful person, wonderful interview. So pretty neat to hear that.
It is interesting how everything kind of loops back into each other.
Yeah.
Now, well, no, I was just going to say that. I mean, I really endorse. I love that Cardinal News.
yes,
I
me
think
too.
it's a great source
I agree.
of
Absolutely.
yeah. I do.
Absolutely. They're doing
And the
good.
format is kind of interesting
It
too.
is.
It's kind of like I guess public radio, public TV.
Yeah.
It's
And
you can subscribe and give your
all
contribution.
donation based too. They have no private backing, so it's,
Yeah.
And they're doing some good stories too. I think they have almost is 8 people working right now.
yeah. Something like
they're
eight
trying to
films.
really expand it too, so they can do more stories. And the thing about them that's really interesting is they're just focused on really on Southwest and South Side Virginia.
Yeah, they do. There's been a controversy about a hospital that didn't company from Chicago by
Yeah.
in Patrick.
Yeah.
And the best in-depth reporting to really know what's going on has come out of Cardinal News. I mean, it's just been amazing the coverage that they've done. So, but the play is I'm proud of the play. I am. It's a very difficult topic. It is sad. You know, we go up there and we try to have some levity in our rehearsals and all of that. But we all are very much aware of what a sad story it is, and it's controversial enough still that a lot of people don't like to talk about it. A lot of people feel like that we favor one side over another side. You know, you get that, and it pretty much. I stand at the back at the end of each performance, and it pretty much, you can tell what they went in with, the view they went in with, the view they come out with.
Right.
You know, if you come in with supporting one side, then you come out thinking we've mistreated, you know. So it's interesting to hear people's comments that,
I'm sure.
that they're so different. But you almost, like I said, it's predisposed to it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's at the nucleus of county history. I mean,
It is.
it's
We absolutely, with the, more internet, more digital, things that you get, our tourism is just very much focused on this court. People will read about this tragedy, or they'll read about the shooting, and they will come, and we get visitors. I'm amazed at how many places, people will be just traveling through, and this is where the courthouse was shot up, and they'll stop to see it. So
So you are producing. You're a producer.
well, I think that's what they finally get around to calling me. They asked me, somebody said, well, what do you do? And I said, well, my number one job is to make sure we have porta potties and the bathrooms are working.
Important job.
But I mean, that's important. I mean, if you're going to bring 110 people in, you got to have restroom facilities. So I secure the porta potties, and then if I'm around, like when the play, and if something happens, the bathroom overflows, and I can call maintenance and do things like that. But I sell the tickets, and then I try to go and. If they need help with costumes, if I can do anything with that, I try to provide the paperwork. I print the scripts, I print the tickets. We do the program the little program you'll get. On the night that we do the play, I'll be responsible for crowd control, keeping people entertained enough until we can open the doors, getting the programs out, getting people seated. It's just, it's a whole variety of things that I do that is fun. It is.
Yeah, and the whole month is a wonderful opportunity for local businesses, because people will be flooding Main Street, and then after the play, they might want to spend some money at an ice cream shop that gets opened across the street, or maybe the farmer's market behind the courthouse. So it's a wonderful thing for the county.
I've saw the play before, and it's great. It really,
Well,
really is.
I've sold tickets from Yorktown,
Okay, wow.
Richmond, Chesterfield, Midlothian, other places. A lot of people tell me they're 2 to 3 hours, and they just stay the night. Well, if you stay the night, you're going to eat, you're going to stay in a motel, you'll probably buy gas. And so I've always regretted, I didn't know exactly how to do it, and I still don't know exactly how I would have done it, but I've always regretted that we did not do some kind of an economic impact. That how much did it make a difference in eating, the restaurants and motels and things like that. And we've never done that. Like I said, I regret that we didn't do that, but I didn't quite know how, and I still don't know how I would gauge that.
It's challenging.
There seems to be 3 events that really bring people in. This, and the 2 flea markets.
Yeah.
And
Fiddler's Convention to some
the Fiddlers,
extent,
yeah.
too.
it would be interesting to see.
And this would be, when you say that, it's a good time for me to tell you that I went to Stompin 76.
Really? Okay.
I did. I went to
Awesome.
Stompin 76. I was young, a whole lot younger than I am now, because we ended up walking about 5 miles walking in. But I saw Bonnie Raitt, John Prine.
Did you see the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band?
Yeah, they were there, and then there were a lot of bluegrass people, Flat and Scruggs. I mean, it was a huge lineup. You go back and you look at that, it was just pretty amazing. But I went the first day, and we ended up walking in, and it was unlike any experience that I ever had, and and that was the day that they rushed the fences and tore the fences down, and then the pagans came in to keep order. And they terrified me because they were walking around with sticks, whacking people, and all of that. And there was some kid, very young kid, sitting close to us, and he told us he had hitchhiked up from South Carolina.
Wow.
Said he had worked in tobacco all summer so that he could come up and go to Stompin 76. He was stoned out of his mind, and we didn't anymore get started. Then he fell face forward, and he just lay there, and I'm thinking, I think he might die. He might be dead. All of his buddies paid no attention to him whatsoever. I don't think he saw a thing that day. I don't think he saw anything at all. But that was an experience.
Oh, I bet.
That was quite an experience.
You can read stories about people hitchhiking online.
Oh,
I've
yeah.
always been fascinated with it. My girlfriend actually got me one of the original, not one of the original, but one of the reprints of the shirts.
Yeah.
Something 76. It seems like to be like the Woodstock of Carroll County
Yeah.
history.
Oh,
so-
it was, yeah. But see, we loved concerts, and we were always going to concerts, and we just thought, and we knew the man who owned the land. We knew him because he was from Ararat.
Okay.
And so, we just thought that it was just going to be like a small thing. I mean,
small thing,
we
yeah.
didn't think anybody was going to show up. And then you get there and you start looking at acres and acres and acres. I mean, I have pictures, and it's like, it's inconceivable. There were that many people on that hillside.
They said people were lined up to the interstate in Hillsville
Oh, yeah.
getting off. So
I think my husband then told me that we walked, I think he said somewhere between 5 and 7 miles to get in. That's how far back we had to park.
Wow.
You couldn't get to it. So but then, like I said, we were younger in 76. I wasn't very old. And so we just walked and went, and we stayed all day and talked to people. I mean, it was a wonderful experience for me because, I didn't know all the stuff that was going on that went on.
We talked to our track coach, John Delp. He's a state trooper, and he said that he was a little boy when it happened, and his parents sent him out to sell water bottles to tourists who were came
at
to stop
Layville
76.
School
Yeah.
at that time.
Yeah.
And he just said that he had never seen so many people in his life.
Exactly.
In one
Yeah,
place.
that was
And
true.
I don't know how old he was, probably 6 or 7, but
Yeah.
I guess to be in his shoes at that point in time is just amazing.
I love big events. And I think if I could go back and see it, because I don't like chaos, but there is something exciting about it. To have this big thing happen.
There was a period in my life when the man who was the president of the International Bluegrass Association was a friend of mine, and another friend of mine, and I used to go to all these bluegrass festivals, and we went to Hawk's Nest up in whatever it is, in New York. We went to Daylontigo. We went to a lot of bluegrass festivals. And, of course, never anything like Stompin 76. But they're fun, you're right. I mean, that whole thing of getting outside, and you're sitting there with your picnic basket and, the music and all that. I think it's just, I enjoyed those experiences.
I think what would make it really special is being in your home too.
Yeah.
Like we
Look
normally
outside.
live, just all the craziness. They actually didn't they try to have another Stompin'? It didn't work out.
I don't think they passed an ordinance in Carroll County that there could never be another Stompin'.
Oh.
And I don't think anybody ever got it off the ground. I think there was some attempt to do it, maybe in the town limits or something where they wouldn't do the county, but I don't think they ever got it underway. But that leads me to another wonderful experience. I've had a wonderful life, truly a wonderful life. And I was invited to go to the Kennedy Center for the 25th birthday celebration of Seldom Seen, which, they are big. So I tell everybody my claim to fame is I got to party with Ricky Skaggs and his wife and all these people. So
So, do you like bluegrass?
I love music. I mean,
Okay.
I just always have just loved music.
We've been fortunate enough to have Sam Bush
Yeah.
on the podcast.
Oh,
He was wonderful too.
Yeah.
And something like that bluegrass scene, which around here is absolutely massive. I know it's more centered in Galax, but still, the area, music is extremely important.
I love music, and we used to go to concerts just a lot. Probably the neatest concert I ever went to in my life was the Bee Gees, but theirs was their music, but it was also the light. I mean, they had the most fantastic stage, and then all of that, you know. And one of my most memorable I went to see Willie Nelson, Emmylou Harris in Roanoke, and Emmylou Harris was about 10 months pregnant, and her feet were swelling, and they had made her gold tennis shoes,
Okay.
and so she came out wearing her gold tennis shoes, and she waddled out, but she was wonderful, you know. She was great. So
It's amazing to perform.
And there is music in the Carroll County Courthouse play.
there is music in the courthouse play. Our music there is a difference in people who really get into this. You know, there's a difference in old time and bluegrass music. So our singers are probably in the play are probably more old time. We incorporate a couple of primitive Baptist hymns, Angel Band,
I think yesterday
Oh Wondrous Love.
we heard Mr. and Miss Harmon sing a few while we were waiting for Mr. Levering to arrive. So, yeah.
And so, and then we at intermission we have we have a group that play. We used to call them the Courthouse Quartet, and so there is music incorporated. He starts the play with the singing of O Death from Oh Brother Where Art Thou.
A great man.
Yeah.
That's really good. So to kind of plug the play here, it's every weekend in April, correct?
Every weekend in April, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Our Fridays are always at 7.
Okay.
Our Saturdays are sold out, but the first Saturday and the third Saturday is in the afternoon, and the other two are at night. And then our Sundays are always at 2 o'clock every day. And we've got about, I think, 4 shows, something like that are sold out now.
Wow, that's amazing.
That's awesome.
A lot of local support.
Absolutely.
I wonder how many people you have that are coming once and then coming again another weekend or another day.
Don't have as many people repeating in the same year, but I am amazed, and I use that word not because everybody says they're amazed, but I am amazed how many people come back in and say, I have been to it every year that you all have done it.
Yeah, that's
I've
true.
seen it every year. And I mean, there are a lot of those people, and this is our 5th year of doing it, I think.
Yeah. The play's great. It really is. The acting is wonderful. And it's a long play, too.
It's very long.
It's very long, and there's a lot of story involved with it. And at first, you're sitting there, and it does feel like you're watching a play, but after a while, you get really into it. And the thing, we talked about this last night, it's in the place where it happened. And it's a very serious and solemn event, and you do feel that energy as you're watching it. So I think it's very special in that way.
It is. I think it is. And I think the fact that it does happen in the courthouse is the only other experience. In the summer of 2014, Frank Levering has Cherry Orchard Theater, and it's an outdoor theater, and he did a small segment and called it To Catch the Allens, which involved just the posse chase, and it was outdoors. And now ambience was not the word, because they're talking about the bloodhounds, and the dogs way down in the hollow began barking. You know, it's like, oh my gosh, this is just amazing. So that was quite an experience too. But he just adapted that very small segment from when the posse was out chasing him, and he called it To Catch the Allens, and used it, at his Cherry Orchard Theater. So anyway.
Do you save recordings of the plays in case
We've had good luck and bad luck. We had it video what's the word, video taped the first year.
Okay.
And it's good.
Yeah.
But we weren't good. Every year that we've done it, we've fine-tuned it. Every year that we've done it, it gets better.
Yeah, right,
It does. And so now when I look at 212, so 219, we got a young man who was studying videography at UNC, and he swears it's there, and he's just not put it together, but he hasn't produced it.
Right.
So this year, not to take any chances, because we do feel like this will be the last year with a lot of us who are aging out. We do have it. It is being videotaped,
Awesome.
and
Okay.
we will have those available. And
Wonderful.
he is professional, and he does this all the time. And he's coming to our rehearsals so that
Awesome.
he can get, put some of those into the tapes too and all of that.
That's wonderful.
But I will go back just a minute, because I guess the founding of the Historical Society, and I was involved in the sesquicentennial celebration of Carroll County, which was 150 years, and that was a tremendous thing that we don't have time to talk about. And then the other thing was the play and the symposium in 2012, that 100 year. We had a gentleman who was on the board of the Historical Society named Gary Marshall. And it was Gary's idea to do this symposium. And that symposium was, I found those materials today. We had 2 days of very scholarly study. We had a man who came, expert in weapons from Tech,
Okay, wow.
and talked about the caliber of guns and where they made the holes, and and all of these things. We had sociologists who came in and talked about the sociological things about it. I mean, it was wonderful.
Yeah.
So we had 2 days. At night, we had Jack Henshelwood, who went on to be with the Crooked Road. He had written a song about the tragedy. And we had music, and we had a program at the VFW where Morgan Griffith,
Okay.
the representative, spoke, and he has a Sidney Allen table. Little
Really?
box, not a table, a little box, which he will not part with. And a representative from each family that lost someone, there were 7 people who ultimately died with Floyd and Claude, and they received a wreath. And then the next day, we did a wreath laying and went up to Pulaski to Judge Massey's grave,
Yeah.
went out to Fremont to Lewis Webb's, went down to Bear Trail and did Betty Ayers, and it went and laid wreaths at each. And then the play was part of that symposium. That's how we ended up, the play was at. So someday, I really do hope that somebody, with all the new things that go on and all the new discoveries that people make, that maybe someday somebody again will do a symposium like that, where they really look at, because Gary did it was a wonderful job that he did. He got scholars from all over the country to come here and talk about it.
Yeah.
And it was a real in-depth look at Ron Hall and Bill Lord and somebody else, I think, who had done a book. They had a little panel discussion about the books that had been written about it. Just lots of scholarly things that I hope someday somebody will come back and do that again.
Because
But
it is important.
it is.
Yeah, it's a big part of county history, and I think that's why everybody should go see the play too.
Yeah.
The play's absolutely wonderful. We can't say that enough. So to wrap up, we always have a few questions that we ask.
Yeah.
Ethan.
What advice do you have to younger generations, young people, on how to have a career that they're proud of, a life that they're proud of?
Well, I always thought you got to find your meaning. What is it that gives you meaning? And, that's different things for different people. One of my favorite writers is Viktor Frankl.
Okay.
Yeah, you're familiar with him. So to me, it's finding something that you like, something that you can commit to. It may be at home, it may be gardening, it may be something there.
Yeah.
It may be out of the home, but you got to find something that brings you some joy. It that makes you, And in my case, I always wanted. I don't know. Ever since I can remember, I always wanted to do something that would make a difference. I mean, I always felt like I wanted to do something that would make a difference. And I've always loved history. And I guess early on, I realized that somebody does need to be trying to save this history as much as we can. And I've pretty much devoted my adult life to doing that. I do a lot of work in Patrick County. At one time, I served on the board of directors at Jeb Stewart Trust in Ararat. So, but I love it. It's just something that I enjoy. And to me, if you've got a career that you hate, if you just hate getting up, going to work every day, in my opinion, you need to quit that and go find something, that you do enjoy doing, because life's pretty short. I mean, no matter how old you get, it has gone real fast. Yeah, so. But enjoy what you're doing,
Of course,
like what you're doing. And a whole lot of that, you can make that too, you know that.
Yeah,
I mean, you can take anything and find a little fun in it, and take anything and find it hard. So, but I do think what you do has got to have some meaning. It's got to be something that provides you some joy.
Of course.
This last question is a bit of a doozy, but we always ask it. What is the meaning of life to you?
And you answered it mostly in your previous response.
Yeah, and that is what I said. To me, the meaning of life is being a good person, making a contribution to your society, to people around. I think, I don't know that I know the meaning of life. Yeah. I'm almost 83 years old. Maybe if y'all come back when I grow up, I can tell you the answer to that.
Ms. Puckett, it's been an honor to speak with you today.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
We both really enjoyed it. We're super glad to have this opportunity.
Thank you.
It means a lot to us.
Thank you.